Hi boys and girls, I'm here to read you another book today. Today's book is also about a garden, a different kind of garden. The Curious Garden by Peter Brown. The Curious Garden. There once was a city without gardens or trees or greenery of any kind. Most people spent their time indoors. As you can imagine, it was a very dreary place. However, there was one boy who loved being outside, even on drizzly days, while everyone else stayed inside. You could always find Liam happily splashing through his neighborhood. It was on one such morning that Liam made several surprising discoveries. He was wandering around the old railway, as he did from time to time, when he stumbled upon a dark stairwell leading up to the tracks. The railway had stopped working ages ago, and since Liam had always wanted to explore the tracks, there was only one thing for the curious boy to do. Liam ran up the stairs, pushed open the door, and stepped out onto the railway. The first thing he saw was a lonely patch of color. Wildflowers and plants were the last thing he had expected to find up there. But when he took a closer look, it became clear that the plants were dying. They needed a gardener. You can see the patch of plants right here. And there's Liam. Liam may not have been a gardener, but he knew that he could help. So he returned to the railway the very next day and got to work. The flowers nearly drowned, and he had a few pruning problems, but the plants patiently waited while Liam found better ways of gardening. What does it look like he's doing right there? What are you thinking or wondering that he might be doing? As the weeks rolled by, Liam began to feel like a real gardener. And the plants began to feel like a real garden. Most gardens stay in one place, but this was no ordinary garden. With miles of open railway ahead of it, the garden was growing restless. It wanted to explore. So you can see how it's expanding and exploring the railway. The tough little weeds and mosses were the first to move. They popped up farther and farther down the tracks and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. Over the next few months, Liam and the Curious Garden explored every corner of the railway. Look at how big the garden is growing. You can see Liam in the middle of all the flowers. And there he is. Here's Liam looking out over that way. You can see all the plants and the flowers that have spread all out and around. And if you notice, there's big bushes. After spending his spring, summer, and autumn with the garden, Liam's time on the railway was finally interrupted by winter. Heavy blankets of snow fell on the city that season, and for the first time since he'd become a gardener, Liam could not visit the plants. Rather than waste his winter worrying about the garden, Liam spent it preparing for spring. After 3 cold months, the snow finally began to melt, and Liam rolled his new gardening gear out and over to the railway. Winter had taken its toll on the garden. But thanks to Liam's planning, his handy new tools, and a little help from the sun, the plants soon awoke from their winter sleep. What do you think one of his special tools might be to help the garden grow? What does it look like he might be doing? The garden had always wanted to explore the rest of the city, and that spring it was finally ready to make its move. Once again, the tough little weeds and mosses set out first. They popped up farther and farther from the railway and were closely followed by the more delicate plants. The garden was especially curious about old, forgotten things. So you can see that the garden is coming down here on the building, and it's coming out of the building, so it's not just on the railway. And here's an old broken down car that the garden has taken over. A few plants popped up where they didn't belong. One's covering a stop sign. One got wrapped around a fire hydrant, but it looks like Liam is taking care of those. Others mysteriously popped up all at once. So it shows a pot outside filled with flowers. And here's Liam. He looks like he's in a disguise. He might be planting flowers all around the city. But the most surprising things that popped up were the new gardeners. So if you look, you can see Liam's over here and all the children following him. You can look and see different people gardening in different places. There's a scarecrow. So all different gardeners popped up. And it looks like the garden took over a lot. Here it is, grass-covered stairs, people outside, where at the beginning of the story, if you remember, people weren't outside. They said that people hardly ever went outside, and now look, they have this huge, beautiful garden to explore. And there's some pictures over here of some animals, some bushes that were made into animals. Looks like Miss Brown's favorite animal right here. Who remembers what that is? Look how pretty everything's becoming. Many years later, the entire city had blossomed, but of all the new gardens, Liam's favorite was where it all began. And it looks like he's out there with his family, his mom and his dad, and his little or big sister. Right in the original spot that he found, that small little garden that he saved. And here's a picture you can see of the city. And it's all the tops of the buildings and the railways are all covered with beautiful gardens. Thank you for listening to this story with me today.